Welcome to SEFAA Soundbites, your quick pulse on all things multifamily, brought to you by the Southeast Florida Apartment Association. The Southeast Florida Apartment Association podcast and the views and information shared in this episode are provided solely for general guidance, informational, and educational purposes only, primarily for professionals in the multifamily housing industry. The views expressed by hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the Southeast Florida Apartment Association. This podcast does not constitute legal, financial, or operational advice. Listeners should follow their own company's policies and standard operating procedures, and, when needed, seek professional counsel before acting on any topic discussed. So, grab your coffee, plug in, and let's get prepared. This is SEFAA Soundbites.
Hello, my name is Deborah Coleman. Our team at RezCor AAA Supply is proud to sponsor this episode of SEFAA Soundbites. When it comes to appliances and air conditioning, there are many suppliers to choose from. In today's market, the challenge is not what you buy, it's how and from whom you buy it. When you partner with RezCor, you get much more than the best brands in the market. You receive attentive and knowledgeable service from the best professionals in the industry. With decades of experience, our team members are always a phone call, email, or text message away. Our commitment to quality and personalized service sets us apart from the competition. Whether you need to replace, repair, or renovate your appliances and HVAC systems, we can deliver. Please give us a chance to earn your business. Mention SEFAA Soundbites for a special introductory offer. Here's to another amazing episode of SEFAA Soundbites, sponsored by RezCor. Welcome back to SEFAA Soundbites, the official podcast of the Southeast Florida Apartment Association. I'm your host, Deborah Coleman, 2026 SEFAA Associate Vice President. And today we're talking about topics that can make a big impact on a property's success, keeping owners informed and engaged, and building strong supplier partnerships that help communities operate more efficiently. Property owners expect results, communication, and confidence in their management teams. At the same time, supplier partners can be valuable resources that bring solutions, expertise, and support beyond the products and services they provide. Joining us today to share their insights are Olga Borges, David Daly, and Chantal Renaud. Please introduce yourselves. Olga, let's start with you.
Hi, my name is Olga Borges. I am the Senior Director of Experience at Avanti Residential, and I pretty much oversee from the prospect all the way to the move out or renewal cycle of our residents as well.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you for being here today.
I'm David Daly. I am Regional Manager for the Southeast for Harbor Group Management Company. And basically, I do everything I'm told.
Hi, I'm Chantal Renaud. I'm the Area Vice President for RAM Partners, LLC, and I oversee South Florida. And I'm just so happy to be here with you guys.
Thank you so much. And David, welcome. And Chantal, welcome. Thank you all for being with us here today. So let's get started. This is SEFAA Soundbites. So let's talk about keeping owners happy. That's probably a priority in our world, right? Would we agree on that?
Yes.
So understanding owner expectations. So let's start with you, Chantal. What's one thing properties can do to strengthen their owner relationships?
For our properties, I think it's really important knowing what the goal of the client is. What do they want to do with the property? You know, if it's a lease up, value add, reposition it. It's vital to just listen and to understand what the need is. So then we can strategize and make sure that we're proactive when we're having those conversations with them or putting plans together.
Excellent. Thank you. How about you, Olga? Do you want to jump in on that a little bit?
Yeah, for me, it's really just being honest and transparent with them. To Chantal's point, what do you want? What are you looking for here? What is it that, we can't give you what we don't have, right? You can't take water out of the cactus if it's not there. So understanding what they want and how we can make that return is really important. What can we do with what we currently have, which in some situations, right, we're stuck with what we're stuck with, but we've got to come up with unicorn money somehow for them. So how do we partner that? And I think that comes with being honest and transparent. And once you build that relationship and they trust you as an operator, then it's easier for them to understand and assimilate what you're saying. Hey, I can get you this if we do that, and that type of strategy.
And what, I would say too, like it's almost managing expectations, right? And when you think about it, don't we do that in both directions? Because we manage expectations with our residents and then we manage expectations with our owners. And when expectations go awry, that can bring problems. So how about you, David? What are your thoughts on that?
I was going to say, just to piggyback on what she said, I mean, it's understanding their priority. Like, what is the owner's priority? Is it cash flow? Is it long-term repositioning? So, our role is to align on that early. So that way we can get them the biggest return possible. So that way that aligns any surprises and everybody can live happily ever after.
Yes, great point. And I think that understanding owner expectations, right, is very important, and keeping owners happy is also very important. So what do you think that owners value most about their management teams? Let's start with you, David.
I would say communication, communicating and being transparent, not hiding things, Owners, they don't just want the good news. They want to know the entire picture. They want the context of it all. We can't just highlight our wins. So being equally proactive about challenges, whenever you pair that with actionable solutions, it's about presenting a complete picture and demonstrating that you're already working to get ahead of it.
Yes, I can see that that's very important. And I think that goes back to the communication that you mentioned as well. So applying that both ways, what would you want to say about this topic?
Well, for me, it's more progress than perfection. I tend to get really drilled in on the experience and the perfection aspect, and they're probably not even expecting that from us, right? They're expecting honest accountability. For me, sometimes I just call one of our asset managers who's a little finicky, get on a call. They're a different tone. They're a different energy once you get in front of them. I'm like, okay, what are you pulling over here? What report are you pulling to get these numbers? Sometimes they're not even aligned with the right reporting, and they're just having questions that are unnecessary. So really underselling and over-delivering has always been a big key for me in my success, where I just show up and get it done versus, I'm going to do all this, and then nothing ends up happening. And again, it's that trust that we continue to build with them that allows us to bring in more business to our management.
Mm-hmm. And you touch on a great point, because they might be looking at the wrong report.
Yes.
Or they might, their numbers might be coming from a funny place, or they might not understand something about something. So just because they're the owner doesn't necessarily mean they understand this business. That's why they need us to manage that business. So being able to educate in both directions, right? So that comes with what David was saying about, being honest and upfront and fully disclosing everything that's going on. When we're able to do that, we're also teaching, because that's explaining, I'm not hiding anything, so you don't have to dig it out of me. There's nothing you have to come look for. You just need to talk to me so we can talk it through and uncover what needs to be looked at from all directions. And sometimes it might mean a different action that they need to take also. So that goes both ways. What about you, Chantal?
What really struck out is having that conversation. So sometimes we might want to just shoot an email with the information, right? Here's the problem. Here's our solution. This is our plan. But I think sometimes it benefits us when we pick up the phone and say, do you have a few minutes? I just want to talk you through what's happening on the property, and this is what we're going to do about it. We're pivoting from this option to another. So it goes to that trust, knowing that we have their best interests at hand, and that we're there for them, and we understand that this can be a concern, and it's a concern for us, even though we're not the owner, we're the management company. So I think just that responsiveness and really being available to our clients. Sometimes they'll send that email and we can't get to it, but I think a phone call goes a long way.
Correct, because they want to feel confident. They want to feel confident that their asset is being protected. And building those relationships, coming to them with not just problems, but the solutions. This is what's going on. This is how we're going to get there. So that way, once they see that you're invested as much as they are, they no longer question you.
Right.
And
you're a liaison for their best interests. They know that that's what you're representing, and that's what you're out there doing.
100%.
Great. So I would say, how can teams communicate, to that note, how can teams communicate challenges without creating concerns? So we've talked about that a little bit already, how important it is to be fully disclosing about everything that's going on and not to be afraid to address issues. So when you are working with an owner, is it primarily you, Chantal, or are your teams, who is speaking directly to that owner?
Well, I'll definitely say I'm the one delivering that challenging information. And of course, my team will be looped into the discussion because we're, a team effort. But I usually initiate whatever that challenge is and also direct the property manager to follow up and give details on what that obstacle we faced was. These are the steps we're taking and this is how it's going. It's working well, or we may have to tweak a few things because we noticed X. So I think giving them an update and letting them know our radar is still on it, amongst other things that happen on the day-to-day, because you can be handling one challenge and then the next day, hey, this is property management. We have another fire to put out. So I usually take the lead, but I do empower my managers to give that follow-up. So the client understands boots on the ground is there and it's, important for them.
And I was actually going to ask that next. You just kind of segue right into that. So your teams do have some contact. Do you work with your teams on their relationship or communications with your owner groups?
Oh, absolutely. My team knows me. I am all about Outlook reminders and sending me those agendas in advance because we want to put our best face forward for our client. I love to put a second eye on things just to make sure that we're checking all the boxes that the client is looking for, that we understand the client and their personality, what data they want to see. So I'm definitely involved with my managers. I do let them put their creative spin on it because we want them to shine as well. But I'm that face of that challenging news.
I love that. I love that you want them to shine as well. That's a beautiful thing about our industry, I think. I think we all agree with that concept. And so it sounds like when we talk about teams communicating challenges, it also has to do with our mentorship with our teams. And so that they are able to do that when the time comes and the opportunity arises.
Absolutely.
So same question for you, David, same topic.
And I was going to say, she basically said it was confidence, teaching the teams to be confident. Whenever we're not there, they're speaking, they have to have confidence. I always say, don't just bring the problem, bring the path forward, but be confident in what you say about it.
Love that. Yeah.
Forward. I'm going to use that, David.
Wait, say that one more time.
Don't just bring the problem, bring the path forward.
Yeah, love that. Solution-based thinking. Very great. How about you, Olga?
Yeah, for me, I had some notes, which is providing solutions and recommendations. Don't just dump the problem. I know we're talking about vendor partnerships, but some of these involve our vendor partners, right? And what solutions, what's the best price, what's that partnership bring to us with those? It's also for us, sometimes our biggest challenge is occupancy. How do you get them to understand that the market has shifted, that we have budgeted for maybe when we took over, the performer rents are nowhere near where they are today because they were pre-COVID or whatever that case is, and having those expectations, but letting them know that they have the right people in place, right? You have to make it a raw effort to look at your product, to look at your people. And when is the last time they shopped their comps? When I'm talking to them, I'm like, okay, our group went out, we shopped the comps this month. Here's what the competitors are doing. Here's why we're trending in a concession market. Here the reasoning. But you've got to be able to look at the people as well. A lot of people in our seats tend to brush some of those people problems under the rug in hopes that they'll go away, but they can see that. And they can see that you're not taking accountability, not only for them, but for you and for your team as well. We want to make sure that they are accountable at all times, that they're seeing that transparency. And it's not that we're going to terminate anyone's employment immediately, by no means, but it's just having those conversations to say, you're not leasing. Here's why. It's a people problem. It's not the pricing. We're stacked, and we have to have those conversations. I don't know if you guys are facing concession-driven markets. I operate in all of our states, right? Arizona, Denver's a huge one for concession saturation. How do you get an owner to agree with that? Again, to your point, it's the trust you've built. Them knowing that once you're pitching a concession or a lowered rent, you've exhausted all other options before you've spoken those words out loud, and you've held yourself and your teams accountable before asking for those.
We recently did a SEFAA soundbite. You can look it up on working with teams and empowering teams. And it strikes me today as we talk about this topic, how related it really is and how it really also comes back to that. Because when we are empowering our teams and training our teams and not afraid to face the problem, problems, but with a solution based forward thinking, I think you said, then we're creating a recipe for winning. And that extends to then our conversations and our dealerships with the owner,
I was
right?
going to say, because then it shifts the conversation from concern to alignment,
In partnership.
And
Yeah, love that. Love that.
Yeah.
When it doesn't become, me and you, it becomes us. And how are we going to resolve this? And at the end of the day, that is what it is,
That's
because
what it's
the
all
owner
about.
has chosen you to represent their asset. And if it's a partnership, it's so much stronger than if it's a friction, right?
Right. Oh, yeah, it's so much easier.
So any last words on this topic? We'll start with you, Olga.
For me, it's just being transparent, showing up every day for your teams, holding them accountable, holding yourself accountable, showing them that we've done everything from training to positioning ourselves for success, and just leading those conversations into success. And I think once they trust, I think that's the biggest part for me. Once they trust that you are there to win it for them, for you, for your company, and for theirs, everything is just a lot smoother.
Love that. David?
I will say it comes down to preparation and confidence. Consistency and communication is huge. So that way, and I'll just say it one more time, don't just bring the problem, but bring the path forward.
For me, it's a mixture of both, of course, trust, communication, and just really listening to your client, your owner, understanding what's important to them, and showing them that that's important to you. Consistently updating them and being proactive. Reach out to them before they reach out to you. That's a big one for me.
Yes, love that. Don't let them sit wondering.
Yes.
Correct.
Let them say, hey, I was just about to call you, or I was just about to send you an email about that. That makes me feel so great when my team and I are like, oh, we should send an update. Let's send a photo. And the client's like, thank you so much. And, sometimes those little simple emails from your client goes a long way.
A long way.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, Olga, you mentioned the importance of supplier relationships and how suppliers can affect your relationships with your owners in terms of how you do business on a day-to-day business. So let's talk about that a little bit. We have a great membership of suppliers here at SEFAA, and we view them as strategic partners. So what do you think separates a good supplier relationship from a great one?
I think you've got to be queued up and ready, because you never know when you're going to need a vendor partner. Right? I had a situation where the water heater of an entire high-rise building just shut down because the vendor did not tell us, and I will not name names, and they're not part of SEFAA, that they did not change a filter. By not changing this water filter, it caused all the decay from the pipes to come back up. So the right vendor came in, and they immediately assessed the situation, were able to get us the help. So having them queued up we use NetVendor, in your vendor platform, making sure they're ready to go. Another big one, and I know we have other opportunities, but I'll just say what the biggest one is in my mind is, now that we're getting into budget season, do they know your property? Can they help you build your preventative maintenance schedule for next year? I can't bring you in as a supplier if I haven't budgeted for you. So let's bring them in now. Let's look at that vendor directory with SEFAA. I only use SEFAA vendors. I truly do. I know I can trust them. I know that they're a phone call away. They're not poaching for business. They're leaning into partnerships and sponsoring just because they want to be a part of it, not because they're pushing any sort of program or business down our throat. It really is a partnership. So to me, having them walk your units, preventive maintenance for next year, having them ready as a vendor so that you can pick up the phone and call them when you need them. And just, again, trusting and leveraging them for so much. And SEFAA does offer that through all of the vendors that participate in our association. They go to our events. They're part of our membership committee. We love them, and we want to continue to leverage our SEFAA vendors.
Yes. And I appreciate that reference to suppliers at SEFAA, because as a supplier, I can tell you that we're very invested in the association, and so are many others, where whether it's through sponsorships, partnerships, showing up when it's not a SEFAA event,
That's right.
but making sure they understand, coming to workshops and understanding the business, and it's very important. So I will come back to that to ask everyone that question, but this just is a perfect segue into a question that I'm going to ask, and then we'll go around a little bit. Okay. But I'm going to move to you, David, to ask you, how can properties better utilize the expertise that supplier partners offer? So Olga talked about the importance of a supplier being around at budget time to know your property. How can you utilize that?
I would say asking the right questions, engage them. Don't think of them as transactional. Think of them as extensions of your team. They're experts for a reason. So utilizing them and understanding how they can benefit you and your property and your teams, it goes a long way.
Awesome. What about you, Chantal?
I think our suppliers, they can also give segue to other issues that you have on your property. So, we'll go straight to the SEFAA supplier directory, call a vendor out, they'll come and source out the problem. And then sometimes another problem comes up and they'll say, hey, do you know that so-and-so does that as well? Okay, perfect. So I love that there's a relationship existing with our suppliers within SEFAA. That's my go-to. And we see them all the time at every event. So there's no missing a face, that everyone is recognizable, and at some point you're going to cross paths with them again. So I really encourage that you get involved in the events, because you never know when you're going to need to call on that vendor or that colleague.
And I love something you said there, because suppliers that are invested in the association attend a lot of events where they are sometimes primarily suppliers at those events. But it has taken, over the years, I think it's taken this rotation where people now understand the value of suppliers understanding each other and what each other does and what their abilities are. And that then becomes a value to you, which is what you just touched on. So I love that. It's how we all work together that is so important, and that we are all a partnership, just like we talked about with owners being a partnership with teams. So are we as suppliers. And you were going to ask.
I would say I literally just use them as a resource, not just a service.
And so talk about that for a second.
So, again, you have to understand that they're not just there to do a job. Anybody can do a job, but they're there to bring, their expertise, their experience. A lot of these things, I know on my side, I am not a mechanic. You do not want me to wire anything. You do not want me close to plumbing. They've been doing this for years. So whenever you build those partnerships, they become a resource. There are people that you can trust. There are people that you can call at 1:00 in the morning and know they're going to show up.
Love that.
And I think that goes to what we talked about, confidence.
Yep.
It helps us as leaders be more confident in who we're calling. And when we have the conversation with the client and we're saying, yeah, we have so-and-so coming out tomorrow, we feel a sense of ease that we trust these people and we're going to be able to follow it to the finish line.
The weight's lifted.
And to your point, Chantal, our residents are very finicky of having people in their homes.
Correct.
I know as the person that oversees the resident relation lines and our entire customer service for our property management firm, Avanti Residential, it really does. I want to trust someone in their home. That doesn't mean maintenance doesn't go with them and that doesn't get followed. But I do want to put someone in someone's home that I trust, that I know that they're going to be there to take care of our interests as well. Because not only have we built these partnerships, now SEFAA offers a lot of events, right? That we can introduce regular people to our suppliers. Is that correct, Deborah?
Yeah. Before we go to that, let me just, with what you all just said, I think it's really important. There's a segue, like we talked before when we spoke about the owner relationships, how important communication was,
yes,
how important disclosure was, how important it was to bring the problem and then bring the solution, right? Like you didn't use the word solution. What was it?
The path forward.
The path forward. So to bring the problem and the path forward, I'm hearing that here as well. I think it's super important with suppliers,
yes,
that suppliers are able to bring the problem and the path forward. So maybe that plumbing problem at 1:00 in the morning turned out to be a filter that wasn't used properly.
Right.
And somebody is able to see that and use that. And I think a value of using SEFAA suppliers from the supplier directory is that you do know where to find them.
Yes.
They're not going anywhere. They're here. They're committed to the industry. They're committed to the association. But even more important than that, to go back to your question about events, they are also attending events. They're attending workshops. They're attending trainings. They're attending speakers. And so I know for myself, if I have an opportunity to learn something about the industry, I take it. I love it. And I may not be leasing an apartment tomorrow, but I think I could. If you called me because you needed somebody to show an apartment, I think I could now because I've listened and learned from enough leasing agents to know what is important. And I know the industry well enough to know what is important. And I think that goes on all levels. So as a regional or a vice president or somebody that oversees operations in multiple states, it's really important to have somebody that's feeding you information that you can take to the bank. Because if I give you what sounds good, like a soundbite, if I give you what sounds good,
Right.
but it's not what is, and you take that information to your owner, everything you just talked about a little while ago about what they value and what's important is down the drain. So that holds a lot of power in everybody succeeding, right?
And here's how I see it with our supplier directory. I have seen the suppliers at the fair housing seminar.
Yep.
I know when they're going into our homes, and let's say the maintenance guy got distracted or something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just putting someone rogue in front of a resident. For all they know, this can be a resident that's troublesome or has brought litigation in the past, or they're dealing with an organic growth or sensitivity issue, but they're not going to be yapping and flapping their gums in there, getting all of us in trouble, right?
Right.
And then making things a lot worse. So to know that you guys are actually participating in the fair housing workshops that SEFAA puts forth and all the other workshops is so much of a relief for me to not have to worry about that other piece of happening in the home when I'm not there to take
Right. Because, it's like we talked about this before as well, but somebody can do a lot of damage by communicating something irresponsibly.
Right.
Like you could have a guy installing a dishwasher and say, hey, these pipes are so old, they clearly haven't taken care of them. I'm sure that's why you had that leak.
Yes.
I think you should do something about it. Think about where that could go, right?
Or it's happened.
So knowing that there's a commitment, so that commitment that we talked about with ownership and with our teams is now also with suppliers, that there's a two-way commitment that we're training each other, that education is going both ways. Because we talked about that before as well. Like an owner might be looking at the wrong report.
That's right.
Well, a supplier, you might have an expectation that falls a little short on what can be done by something, by a service that you need to know different, like that. That's not what can be done, but here's what could be done. And especially at budget time, as you indicated, we're approaching budget season.
That's right.
We're kind of in it for some people. Budget season has arrived for some people. It's longer and longer. As times get tougher, the budget season gets longer and longer. But it's important to have all that information up front. And I've heard this so many times. We do have supplier success meetings as well. And you guys have all participated in those, and we thank you for that.
Right.
But that's when we will highlight a management company to speak about how they do business and how business can be done with them. And that's a supplier attended event. So that's a service for suppliers, but at the same time, it's an important educational piece to understand and learn more. And especially you mentioned net vendor before, I believe.
Yes.
Net vendor, how important it is to understand what all of those, there's more than net vendor, but all of the different portals that are needed to work with a management company and work with a management company under their terms. So a shout out to our suppliers who care about that and care about meeting you on your terms, delivering what you need. And then a shout out to you guys for understanding the supplier investment and the supplier desire to succeed by you succeeding.
Correct.
Because that's what I tell. I work with a lot of maintenance guys, and I tell my job is to make your job look good. It's to make you look good. It's to take care of things that you don't have to take the time to do it. So I think we all find that to be the case. So any last thoughts on our topic?
Get it on the books. Get your preventative maintenance walks in. You have no idea how many disappointed managers we've had when they missed their bonus because they didn't put the right things in their budget for the following year. Emergencies come up. We know that. We trust that our SEFAA vendor partners are going to be there for us. I highly recommend any vendor partner that even starts that introduction that way and says, can I get on your management system for vendor approval? Be on there. You never know when somebody else's insurance might have lapsed and they're going down the list in an emergency, as you said, at 1 a.m. with a backup somewhere. And you might be that one approved vendor, and that's how you get your shot in with this other company you've been trying to get in. We all need a backup. Not every vendor can handle every situation 100% of the time. Unfortunately, you guys get busy, especially as we get into hurricane season and the busier times. Have a few of them already approved in your management system. Their insurance is good. We can pick up the phone and give them an opportunity. I think the partnerships really speak for themselves because you're right, Deborah, they're not hiding from us when you're part of the SEFAA supplier list. We see them, we know them, we trust them. And that's the most important thing to me with my vendor partnerships.
Great. Thank you. David, any last thoughts?
I found whether it's owners or suppliers, the strongest relationships come from the same foundation: collaboration, communication, and consistency. When people know what to expect from you and see that you're invested in the outcome, everything else falls into place.
Well said.
Yes.
We are going to hire you to write a book for us. You have all these great 1 and 2 liners that are phenomenal. Thank you. Davidisms. Chantal?
Well, I would say since we're approaching budget season, this is a great opportunity to do some bids and go to that supplier directory. That gives you an opportunity to reevaluate how your property has been performing and your current suppliers have been contributing to the property. And I just think we do have an event coming up. I usually tell my teams, we're in budget season. Now's the time to get your CapEx wish list ready to go. And I want you to find those vendors, those suppliers, and have those conversations of that project right now so that you can get all of those bids together before we finish out the summer. So I am looking forward to the trade show since we talked about budgets. It's a really important event for me. You can see familiar faces, people that we've worked with in the industry, and some of those vendors there are going to know some of the properties I manage. Like, hey, I went to that property the other day. You really need to look into X, Y, and Z. And that's like a perfect opportunity to have that conversation and meet other people in their company that you haven't met before or are going to specialize in something different that you may need. It just connects us all together, and it's kind of like a family. So I look forward to it.
Thank you so much.
What I love about that, if I may, the trade show is a great opportunity. A lot of us didn't have the money, at least we didn't, to send every maintenance person to NAA. This brings NAA to our backyard. This brings all these vendor partners that are localized and specialized in our market, in our industry, with our climate that's very different from others here in their fingertips. Whereas we couldn't afford NAA, we've got our baby trade show at NAA. I almost get the flashbacks, right, David? When we get back from NAA and we go to the trade show, it's like, oh, yay, we're back here again. What Louis Vuitton can we get from the floor today to get raffled? But no, seriously, to Chantal's point, it's so important to go to the trade show during budget season so that you can have your vendors aligned.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So yes, the trade show is July 30th and it's at the Broward County Convention Center. Tickets are available now. So ask your favorite suppliers for tickets or contact SEFAA directly. The SEFAA trade show is fully focused on Southeast Florida, which is what differentiates it from the Florida Apartment Association and the National Apartment Association. So it's local suppliers, a lot of those that you know and some that maybe you don't know. So that's a great opportunity. And then also the supplier directory has been mentioned a few times. That's available on the SEFAA website and is very easy to find there and very easy to look for people that you might be needing their services. So with that said, that's a wrap for this episode of SEFAA Soundbites. A huge thank you to our special guests, Olga, David, and Chantal. Thank you so much for your time and experience and sharing your insight on maintaining client relationships and also supplier relationships. If you like today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to SEFAA Soundbites on YouTube or listen anytime at www.sefaa.org by clicking the podcast section under the info tab. We'd love your feedback. Leave a comment or share this episode with a colleague who could use a little industry inspiration. Thanks for listening. I'm Deborah Coleman, and this has been SEFAA Soundbites.